Clark Street, Rochdale, Mass. Assessor map 37, parcel. Town of Oxford, notification of a special permit decision. August 11th, 2014. Belco Construction Company, 6 and 7 Deer Hill Road, North Oxford, Mass. The applicant for a special permit under the provisions of a Oxford zoning bylaw to allow for the construction of a common driveway to serve lots known as 6 and 7 Deer Hill Road. The hearing closed on July 28, 2014, and on such a date the board granted the special permit. One more from the town of Oxford. Notification of a special permit decision, August 8th, 2014. Capital Group Properties, LLC. Premises is 101 and 123 proposed Sutton Ave, Oxford, Mass. Upon request for a special permit for the applicant for a special permit, the site plan review under the provisions of the Oxford bylaw to allow for the proposed construction of Oxford Crossing Phase 3, consisting of approximately 44,953 square feet of retail space and a 3,300 square foot gasoline station with convenience store and coffee shop, drive-through, associated parking, and site work. The board granted the special permit and the site plan approval. I wonder where that is in Oxford.
I don't know. That is interesting.
Something
Is that where the grocery
It's
store?
near West.
Right where the
Maybe
Dunkin' Donuts, the
Cahill Tires?
395 exit, the middle one, in center of town, where I think Home Depot's on that road.
Is it near where
Is it
Cahill
in that
Tires?
same plaza
I
with
have
Home
no idea.
Depot? Because there's still some
You know
pads
Cahill
there.
Tires right before you get on 395
On
and
the
by
left,
the
there's some
supply
room up
shop,
there.
and then Dunkin' Donuts there.
Right.
Maybe right around there. That's
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
Right?
something there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's Oxford Crossing and it's phase 3.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
space too.
I wonder if it is,
It's gotta be in there.
it's gotta be Home Depot's driveway.
Depot, Murphy Does.
Oxford Crossing, they call it. It's
Correct.
probably phase 3.
Yeah.
So they gave him a permit. Another
Yeah.
gas station.
We have 7 minutes. We could do a few things that aren't tied to public hearing times, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let me do that.
First one, you've got a continued hearing from Barisio Solar, but Dave Albrecht, as you know, the engineer, was on vacation, and he just got back on Monday, and he didn't have time to get the revisions done for tonight. So he emailed in a request, would you vote to continue his hearing to September 3rd? That gives him 3 weeks, and he should have no problem wrapping it up by then.
Do I have a motion to allow Barisio to come back on September 3rd for the public hearing?
So
Extension?
moved. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do the permit administration. Under permit administration, you've got 2 items tonight. One, Cleveland Jr. has submitted a request for his Haggerty Landing subdivision for the annual approval extension. That's the one that he's going to probably, before the end of this building season, cut the road, now that he's finishing up Lamb's Pond. And he's looking for the annual extension to continue it for 1 year to August 17th, 2015.
Where is that at?
That's the one.
Haggerty Road is off of Ramshorn. If you go down Haggerty Road, it's like a side street coming off. And years ago, they hit a lot of ledge, so it kind of went off for a while. So he's just asking for an extension to his approval.
Yes, just the annual one, but this is the year that he's hoping before winter to actually get a road cut out and maybe even get it up to base coat possibly, but if not, the base coat would come in the spring.
Do I have a motion to give Clairville another extension for his Haggerty Landing subdivision plan?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Just take that back. And the second one for site plan approval is, have an extension request for Ted Murkowski for the Ted's Retail. If you recall, the part that hasn't been developed yet is along Maple Street. There's the possibility from your original approval for a 3rd building, the size of the ice cream place. So to keep that active, he's put in the request for the annual extension, which would be extending that one to August 17th, 2015.
Do you have a motion to accept Head Group LLC's extension for Phase 2 project located at 27 Worcester Road?
So moved.
August 17th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we could squeeze in the A and R, and then we'll be at 8:15. Excuse me, I'm just gonna grab something I put right over here. Rick Para submitted on behalf of Green Hill Realty Trust an A&R down Hill Road, or Major Hill Road, and just to explain, Green Hill Realty Trust is one of Dan Prouty's properties, and it's a perimeter plan. They're not creating anything new. He said just for some legal purposes and to confirm in the field some boundary locations that he went out and did some work on to get them exact. The main part of the A&R is this 210.29 acre piece that is the perimeter, and you can see at certain points they've drilled holes on the perimeter boundaries and things like that. The last thing you signed down there for them last March was creating 2 lots, which are shown on here. And lot 1 was 10.7 acres up here, and lot 2 was about an acre parcel. But the board put a note at the time, because physically the road ends right about there and deteriorates, that lot 2 doesn't have adequate roadway access required under chapter 41 or chapter 48. And that's an important note, otherwise a deteriorating road would automatically get building permit approval. And they understood their main intent at the time was just to carve off lot 7, but he wanted to create this for the future. I would only recommend, because both plans show that you add the same note for lot 2. If you vote it, Jane can add it on before she releases it tomorrow back to Rick, because you don't want somebody in the future to not catch it on the second one and think this building permit, or some future party might come along and say, well, I don't see a note on this particular plan, and why can't I have a building permit? Just want to make it clear. So even though this isn't the intent of the A&R, it's on both of them, and the note should be on both of them to avoid any conflict in the future.
Trying to figure out where this is. This is Route 20.
Yep. And then Hill Road, often called Major Hill Road, is to the south. This is the big piece right at the town line.
Sims is right here?
Yep, Sims is right here. The old Techman building, now Incom, is right about where my finger is. And it's that last giant chunk of land in Charlton before you hit the Sturbridge line.
This Major Hill Road keeps going up, and then the Heritage Country Club is over here.
Yes, right about where your hand is. Yep.
I can't. What's that road coming from?
Schoolhouse,
Sampson.
Alberton School.
Sampson.
Sampson and number 10 Schoolhouse.
Yeah.
It's off to the right.
Yep.
So he wants to do what again?
Just nothing is being changed in the way of boundaries. This is called a perimeter A&R plan, in which all he's doing is confirming the boundaries. The only thing it affects in zoning, but it's not the intent of this, when you file a perimeter plan at the Registry of Deeds, if there was a pending use change in your zoning bylaw, if you were coming to a town meeting, it would trigger a grandfathering. You get a few more years under the old use table, but that's not why this is going on, and we don't have anything like that pending. According to Rick Para, and I believe he's very accurate, is they wanted to confirm some boundaries that were a little gray, and so he went out and did some field work, and there's some iron pins. He located some existing iron pins that are now on this plan, and he added a few more here and there. So it confirms for them in the future, if anybody's interested, exactly where the boundaries are. But at the same time, it just shows some other land holdings, and because it shows lot 2, which has inadequate road condition, you should repeat the note on both plans for lot number 2.
Where's the number 2 behind?
Right, if I could take this pen, right, that's lot number 2. And it even has a notation right there. So even though the road, if I could pull it up, yep.
This is Major Hill.
Yes. And even though it mentions at one point that the road in 1905 or so was discontinued at a certain point, you go by the physical condition also, and the board determined after inspecting it last March that prior to where that lot was being created, it's inadequate. And they said that their main goal was to create that 10-acre lot here, and they just added it on for future purposes. Well, if you didn't put the note on, legally, it would be eligible for building permit. And you want to make sure they upgrade the road first before they do the building permit someday. So,
We have a motion to accept this with the stipulation of adding this phrase in there.
So moved.
Two.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Jane will add it to the Mylar and the paper copies tomorrow.
Just have to sign one paper one, right?
Yes.
And Jane will date it, since we want it to be dated the right date.
Right. For Ross stuff, sign that and then move on to 7:15.
Need another copy.
Being close to 7:15, we have a public hearing, Charlton Planning Board. In accordance to section 7.1.4, 7.2.1, and 7.2.7 of the Charlton zoning bylaws, Charlton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, August 13, 2014, at 7:15 p.m. in the Planning Board office of the George C. McKinstry Building, 37 Main Street, Charlton, Mass. On the site plan approval application by Kelly Lynch, 141 Saundersdale Road, Charlton, Mass. 01507, requesting approval to operate a home-based daycare business at 141 Saundersdale Road, Assessor Map 78, Block 1, Parcel 13. Said property is zoned agricultural A. Copy of the plan applications are available for inspection at the planning board office and the town clerk's office during regular business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard should appear at the time of the public of the place designated. Can you give us
Yes.
a run through?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kelly Lynch is here, the applicant, and just to refresh the board's memory, up until a few years back, home daycare did not require planning board site plan approval, but there was a citizens initiative in a neighborhood that was getting a few home daycare. They petitioned for town meeting to amend the bylaw to add it for site plan. They were concerned in that particular instance about double checking that parking is adequate, that any signage would be properly located, fencing would be there for the outdoor play area and such. So this is only the second one since that came in. You did one before. And went over the plan with her. You have it in front of you. It's pretty basic, and it lays out exactly where her property is located, where she's going to have the drive up in the pickup area, the outdoor area with the fencing and such, which was the main intent when that neighborhood requested the site plan review be added to the bylaw. I'd like to introduce Ms. Lynch if she'd like to add anything or answer any of your questions.
Would you like to have a conversation with us?
There's nothing much to add. I've been doing this for about 15 years in a center base, so the school closed and there's an opportunity to do it at the house.
As far as the zoning part goes, the drop-off pickup area do exist through the requirements.
Yes, our standards are basically just putting it on the plan and seeing that it makes logical sense. So, it makes logical sense, it does, I mean, she's proposed.
Then the other requirements is just like the fencing area and stuff like that.
Yes,
That she's being.
and she goes for her state permits for daycare and such.
So after we approve this, then she just, like you say, just goes for your state permits and stuff?
I did tell Kelly the other day, and it's a copy for you, we did get a comment from the Board of Health, but it's not a request for any conditions. It's pointing out for her information that she just needs to talk to them to go over her flowage rates required under the town's Board of Health regs for gallons per day when you have additional children in a daycare. It's 10 gallon per day, which sounds pretty minuscule. You know, so it's just a question of providing that for you, and then you talk to them directly.
We need to talk to clear it up with
Yes.
this.
Yeah, yeah, they're recommending that you just go talk to them. It's not a requirement of this procedure, they just gave it to us to pass on to you.
Because the approved septic system, approved plan will meet the required,
Oh, good.
I've already
with
called.
the 6 kid, with 6 kids, so.
Good, right, so just talk with them directly on that, and I think they'll be satisfied with that.
I think any standard septic system is gonna meet that, right?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Any comments from the public? Please. Hearing none. Does the board have any other questions?
Nope.
So, I'd like to make a motion to accept the plan submitted to us for the daycare proposal at 141 Sandsdale Road. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Good luck. We'll write it up tomorrow and send it to you.
Great.
Have that, okay.
Oh, yep.
We're just gonna have a public hearing continue for the Ponican, right? Even though it says 7:35.
Yeah.
We jump to something else.
I think, I'd recommend, Mr. Chairman, if we could meet with Russ and his people on his project first, because we might have the gentleman, the abutter, who's been working with me and Mike Loyan show up, and we are 5 minutes early. So, would you mind, Jay, if we met with these gentlemen and then took your project next? Thank you.
Coming up, Jeremy. Come on up. It's Jeremy with Burton. It's
It's nice to see
doing
you
a
again.
wonderful job. Same.
Just
How's
to,
everybody?
if I can speak for 30 seconds, what Russ gave us the other day is a more advanced concept plan. So one for Russ, and if Patty and the chairman can share one.
I'll share.
If you got an extra one. And just to reiterate, and then I'll turn it over to Russ, this is the third pre-application meeting, and that's been great because each one is a little more advanced because of the size of the project. And I'm just glad that you've been working with all of us, because a lot of people don't realize that prior to any public hearing and formal application, a project can work with the planning board and staff for a year or two. And that's how this has been going, which is the way it works. So thank you for continuing to work with us in that process and to come in for your third and hopefully final touch base before you formally submit.
Yeah. No, and that's really where we're at. Burton's doing a great job, as you can see by the plans. We've come a long way. They've narrowed down the topography, the wetlands. We're right at, if you flip to sheet 4 of 5, working towards phase 1 definitive, which will be coming back in a short time to present to you, which is really the meat and potatoes of this, so that you guys can help get us underway so we can actually do some stuff out there and get things rolling. It's been quite a journey, as Alan has said. We're reaching out to everybody and trying to come up with still more ideas at this point in time and how to make this work for everyone. So it's simply where we're at.
I notice the road going in goes by phase 3 and phase 2. Does the road come off of 49?
No, comes off Brookfield Road, phase 1, 2, and 3. And then for future phases, we'd be jumping out onto 49.
How are you gonna get to phase one right now?
Right off Brookfield Road.
So you'd be cutting through, phase, you'd be cutting through phase two to get into it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Mhm.
Um, Any questions?
So,
All private.
gotcha.
Yep. Unless the town would like to extend the sewer line up there, we can.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I know. Anyone would.
Yeah. You guys want to
Anyone.
make a recommendation, we'd be in full support.
Well, maybe that $6 million from the bond might help.
Anything you guys can do to help, we'd love to have.
Without getting into technical details, but the water supply design that you've talked to me about seems to be proceeding pretty well.
Yes, you know, like I said, we're reaching out to everybody, and with the total creativity thought in mind, or creative thought in mind, we reached out to Heritage Preservation Trust, who we gave some property to across the street on the other side of Brookfield Road, basically where it says road on the plan. Looking to form a partnership with them, possibly, and get our water source over there. That's one of the options we're exploring. We sat down and discussed the concept of that with them. They seem to be really in favor of it, because what we bring to the table for them is hopefully tying in with them and helping them maintain their trails, do maintenance on their property, which now, as you know, any nonprofit struggles to pay their bills and do their services on their property. So we think we'd be a really good partner for them, as they would be for us. So it's, again, just extending partnerships here and there and wherever we can make them.
You haven't done any site work or anything yet,
No.
or just kind of just walk the property and visualize what can be done?
Yes. Yep. We're itching to get going.
Alright.
Still looking at the timetable, if I can ask you, Jeremy, of trying to get a complete submittal put together for maybe opening a hearing in October still?
Yeah. Should go like that for phase one.
So for a hearing in October, what would they be submitting to us at that time?
They'll submit a full site plan review and details for phase one, which will include the driveway from Brookfield Road through the front part that someday we'll have phase 2 and 3 off of it, but they'll still design the driveway because they'll be constructing it, and all of phase 1, which is the light green you see on this concept plan. And they've been meeting with me and Graves Engineering from time to time as they go over drainage and topography and stormwater management. So that'll be all part of it. So when you do the phase 1 approval, that'll give them the green light for that, and at some point in the future, they'll come back for a phase 2 and then a phase 3. You kind of master plan something like this, and then you come in site plan phase by phase.
Looks impressive.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting, and again, another partnership. I don't know if we discussed it at the last meeting. We've been in talks with Recreation. I don't know, did I discuss that last meeting, or did I discuss that with you, Alan?
I think you just referred to it briefly at the last meeting. If anything you want to brief the board on, that would be helpful, if there's anything to brief about.
Yeah, no, we did, we've spoken with Recreation. We know the town has the need for fields. Phase 2 is largely the town's part of this, where the fields you would see by E, those are the fields that we would be providing the land for the town to put their own fields on. So that would be the town area, located nice and close to Brookfield Road, so they don't have to come all the way to the rear of the property to visit their fields and have their events and things like that. With what happened with the town's project and how that fell apart, financially, this makes great sense for the town. Here you go, here's some property, you can put your own fields on
And you
here.
get people up to your property to kind of move around.
Oh yeah, sure,
So-
foot traffic, it boils over, and, you know, again, it's just yet another partnership, so.
So phase one looks like you'd be looking for a family campground and motocross, off-road park, and 3-8-mile oval, dirt
Yep.
bike type stuff.
Oh yeah, those are all some of the things we do there, but we'd also, you know, that's an area where we can have adventure races, just so many things. I mean, if you go through the list and look at the things that we're
Very
planning to
exciting,
do
yeah.
here.
Very
Yeah.
Just to brief the board, one thing that Russ, myself, and Mike Loyne and Mike Andrade from Graves have discussed is they'll have to contact the MIPA staff in Boston to see if there's a determination for a MIPA permit. But to refresh a few board members who may not have been on the board long enough to see a MIPA trigger on one of our projects, in Massachusetts, under the State Environmental Protection Act, certain large-scale projects, you contact the state MIPA staff and see if it triggers a MIPA review. If it does, it's done in parallel with the local permitting time schedule. So MIPA may review this and feel that it doesn't trigger one of their thresholds. It's up to their staff to determine that. But if it does, it will be parallel with site plan review and local Concom and everything. And I haven't seen in years a project that's submitted by an applicant at the same time get delayed. Sometimes people make the mistake and go through all of their local and then go to MIPA, or vice versa. But we've talked about paralleling it. And then you cross-reference both permits. MIPA will, if they have to issue a decision, it would say subject to all local permits. And we say in our site plan review, we've been informed that it triggers a MIPA, and the applicant will deal with that accordingly.
Any questions? Brent, have any ideas? Any comments?
Not right now.
Okay. So hopefully, working with the engineering firm, you can get on our agenda for hopefully in October or something.
That's what we're shooting for. No, I'm very confident. They've done an amazing job to this point, and it's really a lot of work to get just to this point. And with getting to this point, they've gotten a lot of details for the next step. So it's coming together nicely, and I don't think we've really set up too unrealistic goals for ourselves.
Question to ask you is,
Sure.
you know, they submit like a preliminary plan like this with 5 different phases. If at any time they only wanted to do like 1, 2, 3, 4, and forget 5, that's not a big issue if they don't wish to do it, right?
No, and that's a very good point, Mr. Chairman, because that's what some of what we've looked at in our working meetings, that if you're going to logically have 5 phases, you want to design it as each piece is a logical puzzle, piece of the overall puzzle, so they fit. And that way you don't have a problem that if you decide to go with the next phase, you're not leaving yourself open with the drainage problem and the retention basins in the wrong location in a future phase, or the road and driveway layout is causing a problem with a gap in between.
Yep.
So exactly, you're right, that's some of what we've looked at pre-application of the logic of the progression of something like this through several phases.
And then if he proceeds with this and gets phase 1 cleared and stuff, then to keep phase 2, 3, and 4, he would just come back every year and ask for an extension to the,
Well,
if it ever got that far.
what he's doing is, this is a master plan for something this big. It's not a subdivision, it's a commercial development. And legally, under site plan, which is a different law from our subdivision chapter 41 laws, each piece that he comes in is its own legal entity, so he's not required to have to come in for the next phase. You just make sure it's designed logically. So what he'll receive from approval in this initial submittal will be all of phase 1 and the main drive that will also in the future be used by phase 2 and 3, but it's all approved. And he needs it to be constructed 100% for Phase 1 anyway.
Okay.
So that'll lock in place the road infrastructure for Phase 2 and 3 nice and early. So it's not something you have to deal with down the line, so. Just one item, usually for a non-residential, I bring a project to the Economic Development Commission to review, and usually they vote their generic support to the planning board. They have no authority, it's just a working group, which is what EDCs are. So, we've got another meeting, and they only meet bi-monthly at the end of January. If I could talk to you about coming in briefly on their agenda.
Absolutely.
Great. So, it'll be the last Monday in the month, I'll remind you.
Did you say January?
Oh, you're right. I'm thinking way ahead, you're right. August. It's the August.
That works.
The last Monday in August, yeah. January would be a little too late.
I was thinking, I'm like,
flexible.
what?
Yeah.
I know I'm getting older, my hearing's going,
Yeah.
but
Just testing.
yeah, that'd be great if the Economic Development Committee.
And you came to them before at earlier phases, so it'll be a
Yeah,
good
they
update for them
They
too.
saw an earlier concept of this plan, 6 months ago. They liked what they saw and they were eager to see more. So.
I assume after this meeting you will confiscate all those drawings.
We'll leave one with Alan for everyone to
Thank you.
Still don't want the sonogram pictures out there floating around for the paparazzi.
It's classified.
It's classified, yeah.
Do you have any other things you'd like to address about this project?
No, thank you. Again, I appreciate the amount of work you and Burton Engineering has put in with myself and Graves Engineering on this board. It's been at least a full year.
Oh, yeah.
And again, that's important. So often people from outside a community will come in late in their design and get into the submittal, but working together from the very beginning will help in terms of all of the site design issues, and it'll be a win-win.
So,
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
thanks. Thanks for having us as always. And can't wait to get back here.
One more step.
And you'll let me know a time on that meeting.
Yeah,
when it gets
probably
closer.
1:30, but I'll let you know. I'll call you tomorrow. I'll just
Okay.
confirm it with you. Sounds good.
Thank you for your time.
Right to Monica now, or?
Yes. Stick around unless.
You're gonna stay?
Yeah.
You can from, Roger.
I'll do.
Perfect, take off, thank you.
Alan, you still have your one, right?
Yes, they gave me two. I stamped them in and I'll keep them under the concept. Draw, we keep things in them. Good.
Want to do the
Yeah, the pond.
725 Monica?
Yes. Mike, if you'd like to join us.
Sorry, I was conversing with Mr. Salute. I know that's not unusual.
I
Hi,
spoke,
everyone.
How you doing?
I spoke with Mike Loyne the past few days, and I've spoken with Mike Demasi, one of the residents in the subdivision, and Jeremy and Mike Andre. And I'd like to put before you 4 items related to the subdivision. The first is, we do have a request for continuance from Burton Engineering because of the second item I'll give you, the Graves Engineering report. The revision they did, some of the items were complete, but others, we're still looking for information on. Michael Andre at Graves is suggesting a few more items be considered. So, A, I'd like to request on behalf of Burton Engineering the extension to our next meeting, not to close the hearing tonight, but B, I'd like to give you a copy of the Graves Engineering report, in which you'll see about half of the items. And I'll pass 3 in this direction and 3 in this direction, so everyone will have one. Regarding the sub-drain revisions along the roadway and the sidewalk relocation and the roadway reconstruction, we're at about 50%, and we need one more iteration from Mike Loyne. Third, the noise barrier design was revised. If you recall from the last hearing session, the original noise barrier layout from the approval several years ago was for 4 of the lots near the pike. And the application revision that came in, inadvertently, they only designed it for 3. So they revised it to the 4, and I'll hand out while I'm talking 3 in this direction and 3 in this direction, in which our noise engineering consultant through Graves, Harris, Miller, and Hanson out of Burlington, reviewed the revised one and said 2 things. One, the revised version that adds the 4th lot is satisfactory. It will work as long as it's constructed as it should be, and we'll have inspectors out there. But they're also mentioning, and I went over this with Mike Loyne, and he agreed and understood that I'd recommended on September 3rd as a condition in your approval, that lot number 7, on the revision plan, it did not show the location of the house. So we're assuming the location of the house would be where the plan from several years ago originally showed it. And that can either be added.
I know we did actually a foundation as well on the house from Mike.
Okay, but we don't have it on our plan.
Yeah,
So
we can- that's
we
something
need to
we can-
cross-reference that on September 3rd, so in the future, everybody understands that that location, the house will work for the noise barrier. Yeah. The elevation of it, the proximity, and that's all in the 2nd paragraph on the 1st page. And then at the very end, the last sentence too. 4th and finally, in follow-up, and I can refresh everyone's memory and then lead into it, Mike met with us, our resident, Mike DeMasi, at our last session of the hearing and discussed his concern about water runoff onto his property and how it had affected his driveway and his swimming pool foundation. And we suggested that our engineer, Mike Andre, a lot of Mikes in this picture, meet with him in the field, which he did last week. And I have a summary report, which I'll hand out to everybody on that. And just bear with me because some of the reports in. There we go. Again, 3 in one direction, 3 in the other. There we go. And I'll just summarize it in general terms. What Graves Engineering is saying in the report from looking at everything is the runoff issue that Mr. DeMasi is concerned about isn't so much coming off the road as coming off the lot adjacent to him that's a higher elevation. And I've explained to Burton Engineering, and Mike Loyne understands, that doesn't change responsibility or the requirement to address that and resolve it within the context of this subdivision review, because it's all within the subdivision. The design just isn't coming off the road, but some type of erosion sedimentation needs to be designed and reviewed with this board and Mr. DeMasi before we close the hearing and vote on September 3rd. So Mike Loyne said, given that it's extended tonight for 3 more weeks till September 3rd, that gives him plenty of time to put together a proposal, have our engineer review it, and we go over all of that at our next session on September 3rd. So that's a summary of where we were at the last meeting, what we've done since the last meeting, and where we are tonight.
Do you think some of the construction that went on in that lot would have caused this problem, and that's why he's got this issue today?
Well, it seems from talking with Mike Andrade that it really seems to be the fact that it's a very hilly subdivision, and you had to properly prep your lot, whoever built the house and whoever cleared it all. And then what you get, it's done properly. But you have another steep lot right above it, and that steep lot is not developed yet. And so you get into that steep lot, not having been prepped by the previous developer who owned the project before the bank foreclosed, or the person who bought the lot and put up your house. No one coordinated the two. So it's kind of a lack of coordination between 2 lots on a steep property. But because it's all within a subdivision, the board has the authority to require some type of mitigation in this review, and the owner of the subdivision has the responsibility to do that. And both engineers agree, our engineer and their engineer, that that's the way to proceed and move forward and get something designed, and hopefully that will address everything.
So, not being an engineer and knowing a lot about engineering, one of the reasons that I brought up the piping that was along the side was from a non-engineer aspect and a non-geographical person, other than states and capitals. I at first felt that that pipe that ran along the side that was bringing the spring waters down was a main culprit to a good portion of the driveway and the frost heaving under the driveway and the sidewalk, because it was quite clear in just non-geographical ways and engineering ways that there was a sort of like a wave of something that was just flowing underneath in a certain direction. So 3/4 of the driveway into the front yard and along the sidewalk was just impounded by weakness. So I focused on that drainage pipe when we had our last meeting. Walking the land with the other mic, because there's about 10 mics in this project and even my children are confused. There is some water that does seem to be coming from the raised land above down over. I think that's the portion that's really seriously affecting the pool, and probably one of the reasons why we put up the drainage thing that we put in. So I do agree that there could be a combination of a raised and elevated land mass next to the lot that's contributing to the water runoff, and as well as uncapped springs that are coming down the side of the road and sort of underneath the ground, just fanning out. So I just want to make that point. Again, that's my unprofessional, know nothing, don't understand geography point of view.
It may be non-engineering, but it's accurate. And I think the last paragraph on page 2 addresses in an engineering way what you've just said. Mike is mentioning that with regard to Mr. Demassi's lot, there are measures that could be implemented on his lot and the abutting upgrading at lot 47 when developed that could relieve the groundwater flow through his lot. And he says, at a minimum, a design of swales, piping, and stone interceptor drains can be incorporated into the south side lots on High Crest, and that would discharge to a disposal or collective system such as the roadway drainage. So that's what Mike Loyne said he'll work on, put together for the September 3rd hearing session. So you're right, you're seeing it the same way that the engineer is seeing it, and now we just move into trying to do something about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the water was getting into the drainage system up above the roadway, and then it had nowhere to go once it got down around the
Yeah,
lot. It just
in the
started
spring
coming
in
up.
particular, so the pool was only 6 months old at best. The water was clearly going underneath the concrete slab work in the back of the pool and coming out the concrete slab work in the back of the pool and going down into lot 49. So it was clearly going under and out, and it took 3 of us to try and dig a swale to try and get that water away from the concrete, but unfortunately we didn't save the concrete in time. It was already cracked. So we're probably in the right direction for preventing future hardships to lot 48, sorry.
Jerry's aware of the catch basin from your review.
Yes, yeah, we've talked, and I haven't given him a copy of the report yet, but we've talked about it. So I'll give him that, and I'll have Mike Andrade continue to work directly with him on that.
I'd like to make a motion to extend continuance of the Ponican Hill estate. And it was back on September 3rd. We'll have a lot of these issues and these 2 reports addressed for that continuance. So do I have a motion to continue the public hearing for Ponican Hill Estates?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
When I get something, I'll give you a call, you can come by and look at it here too, prior to the meeting.
Thank you very much.
We'll address your issues for you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
You too, Jerry. Thanks.
That thing will clip on you, Ross. Just flip it over.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sitting here.
My hearing is good.
That's right.
Selective like men.
Spoken like a woman. Oh, spoken like a Can we address the 7:30 issue for the continuance of the Origio solar system?
Sure.
Do you have any comments for that?
I think we went over it.
Yeah, we did that
Did
one.
we vote?
Yeah, we
Extended
did,
it.
yeah.
Okay, we did vote.
I didn't check it out, sorry.
That's okay. Wasn't sure if we voted or just talked about it. Great. Go to 8:05. Yep.
Can we go to growth management now?
Two items tonight, and I'm just gonna get a map from over here, pardon me. Here we go. Two zoning items under growth management. One, we've talked in previous meetings that Mrs. Cheryl McKissick is petitioning the board heading toward the fall town meeting for a zoning map amendment. And I met with her in the field on Friday and walked it, and just wanted to update the board as she's getting the signatures in the next week or two to submit the petition. The west side of Griffin Road is all industrial general, as you know, and that's the west side, excuse me. The east side is all business enterprise park, and part of that includes Matt Sosik and Ralph Nichols' BEP industrial park that's shovel ready. But what she and her husband want to do is move their business with a lease over on Route 20 and create a new truck servicing, truck depot business, and come in with Burton Engineering a site plan. And the idea is to combine parcels 8, 9, 10, and 12 into a zoning map revision, extend the IG zone across the street over there, which is perfectly legal and logical in the way it's being done. IG would allow the truck depot. BEP is a little more upscale and a little more high-tech, which was done for that neighborhood at the request of Matt Sosik and Ralph Nichols for the business park. But we've talked that there's really no problem because it's undeveloped right now and it would make sense. It's an excellent site to be redeveloped because it's kind of run down and blighted. There's an abandoned house that they're going to let the fire department use for practice. And then you walk up the hill, there's an existing worn-out drive, and it's very flat at the top, and it's a lot of expanse up there. And the idea is eventually the site plan would have a building up here that would be for the business, the truck business, but down below you'd have more of a staging area and a security parking area. So when they tow for the town and everything, they would park everything in there. The site plan will come in for the entire site, but they'll probably construct it in two phases. The first year, the front piece for the yard, and in the future, put the building at the top down the line. We talked about a little vegetative or fence buffering where there's a residence next door, and they understand that they have to put something in for that. But initially, step one is for the town meeting to change the zoning, amend the map. And so she's getting her petition ready, and when it comes in, the planning board will hold a public hearing before town meeting. Then after the town meeting vote, she can come back for a site plan review on the design specifics.
So she wants to change it to IG over here.
Yes, yeah. And it's certainly legal and logical to just extend the existing IG in any direction. It's not spot zoning or anything, it's
Isn't
just,
there a daycare group here?
yes, yeah,
Daycare here, and then you got John's
yeah.
Auto down here.
Yes, and you did site plans for both of those. We've always required commercial daycare outside of home-based daycare to do site plans. So you did a commercial daycare for that, and you did the expansion for John's Auto a few years ago.
Now, with her changing that to an IG, and when she goes to apply for a permit to put this project in, it comes before the planning board again to make sure that screens, buffers,
Yes,
stormwater management all gets taken care of, right?
yes, that's all the board's focus and the board's authority, absolutely. And she understands, what's required, because she did the site plan on the previous location that they leased from somebody, but now they'll own.
Yeah.
They want them to go through that.
So she should be aware of other issues coming down the road.
Yes, yeah. So we had a good walk of the site and got a good feel for it the other day. Worked out well.
I drove up there a couple of weeks ago. Like I said, it's the old abandoned house and stuff.
How does she think the neighbors are gonna be?
I was gonna ask.
Did you get a feel for it?
So far, she's talked to most but not all of them, and she hadn't talked yet to the house right next door where there's obvious need for some buffering. I told her just to keep me in the loop, but she wasn't sure what the person's concern was yet, or the person's reaction yet. But obviously, at a minimum, there's a need for a fence, maybe some more vegetation. There is some vegetation there, but when you get a little farther along toward where their backyard is, it's pretty open.
Yeah.
And she just understands that she's got to do something significant. And see, you know, but it always helps, and I suggested reach out to the abutter, talk to them first, rather than just, you know, have them get a public hearing notice.
So you haven't received any calls yet, I mean, from any neighbors?
Nothing yet.
So they basically own all these four lots right now.
They own 2 of them, and they have the other 2 under option, and they will either own them by the time the site plan comes in, or they'll have written permission to apply.
Now, the petition, it can be signed by anybody in town, like any resident of the town?
Any registered voter.
Any registered
Yeah,
voter.
and
So it doesn't have to be the,
you just need more signatures for the fall town meeting under state law. The special, it's at least 100. So,
Do you have any other items for growth management?
the second one's a little bit of an odd one, kind of interesting. Just wanted to go over something with the board related to the use table in the bylaw and see if you wanted to do a tweaking possibly at town meeting or something. Gentleman came in the other day and met with me, and it's very preliminary. It would be nice if he can move it forward, but his concept is he's talking to a realtor and a property owner on Route 20 on a small IG zone property that's about 3 acres. And he would like to design a possible miniature golf course and maybe even a little bit of a 3-par there. And it would be nice if it moves forward. He's got a long way to go, and maybe it won't happen, but he certainly is determined, and he's talking to a design expert in that field who does that type of facility, and he's talking with the financing and everything. But he saw something in the zoning bylaw, he pointed out to me that he was right. If you look in the use table, in the IG zone, the private for-profit recreation is allowed under site plan. And back in 1987, when the planning board initially wrote the bylaw, for some reason right next to it, they separated out miniature golf and 3-par. And in the IG zone, it's not allowed. And I have no idea what the intent was from 1987, but it kind of doesn't make any sense, because if someone's doing a private recreation facility for gainful profit, including, and it lists a bunch of things, why couldn't you also do a miniature golf or a par 3 course? So, if you look, I'll just pass this around, and I'll circle the lines right there. Par 3, golf, driving range, miniature golf, none of that's allowed in IG, but any other type of for-profit recreational is. I'm wondering if this board would want to sponsor a revision to allow it, because if you look at the IG, why not, from
Yeah.
a land use point of view?
Right.
And it's certainly not anything that,
someone didn't like golf?
we're wondering if there was something specific that someone back then didn't like, a proposal, a specific location that never happened. It's odd.
This makes sense.
You're allowing indoors, theater areas, fitness centers, outposts.
And you would allow anything else outdoor, batting cages, go-karts, anything like
It's almost
that.
falls in the same category.
Yeah, but it called out and prohibited
So
the
small.
golf stuff. And it would be small scale. It wouldn't be anything that conflicts with what Mr. Jennings is doing, because first of all, what he's doing in the relating to golf activities is Phase 5, which would be a long time from now. And he's doing more large-scale stuff that would involve leagues and clubs and more large-scale activities. Well, this would be combined with some batting cages, things like that. It would be a small thing, a little miniature golf on Route 20. I don't think
Well,
that,
Jennings would
I think there's
want
room for
to show
both.
Heritage versus this little.
Yeah. And he's not doing a golf course, you're right, it's just miniature golf, basically.
Yeah.
So you would, probably the board could make a proposal to bring this at the next town meeting to
Sponsor.
sponsor this, to get it put back in as a approved practice,
Yep.
or.
I could draft
or
up
a
for your
special
next meeting.
permit, or a special permit.
Yep. I could draft up a warrant submittal for your September 3rd meeting that you would review and vote and submit, and it would get on the warrant to adjust that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Makes sense.
Don't have to give a motion if we can do this, right?
No, just, the motion would be when you review it.
Yep.
Would you keep it as? You just probably listed it as permitted, right?
Yeah, I would just change it from N, no, to P for site plan. That's all you would have to do paperwork-wise. Yeah, it's a very simple change. And the assurance would be there that it still has site plan review, that it's designed properly.
Right.
Okay.
If you physically look at the location on the map where we have IG, why not? You know,
And there'd be no reason for anybody in town to kind of not want that. It doesn't make any,
Yeah, I have no idea what, maybe in 1987, there was other land that was zoned IG. Some of what was IG back then became BEP, so it might have related to one of those pieces that's no longer IG. Maybe it abutted residential a little too much and there was some concern. That could be the explanation, but it's not the case now, so.
Yeah, 'cause now you'd have noise in the evenings where
Correct.
industrial would be quieter.
Yeah,
Because everybody goes home at 5.
Yeah,
correct.
That might have been a concern at the time.
yeah. Different generation.
Any other good ideas for growth management?
We did our Central Mass regional items last meeting, and I thought I'd put under growth management for your next meeting, the pedestrian and bicycling analysis from the agency.
Yes.
And, a really nice PowerPoint printout that he gave us.
No planning board. That's almost on to growth management. I don't have any minutes to review. Any new planning board business?
Just a few, because tonight was a special meeting in between your regular ones. Just a very brief few, Mr. Chairman. Just a reminder that at your September 3rd meeting, you'll have the public hearing for Nexamp, which is the new owner of the Carbon Hill Road solar facility. And Jane and I have been working on putting the hearing together for you. And again, on September 17th, your second September meeting will be the first of your 3 working sessions with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission staff on the Village District Delta study. So that'll be good. Just a heads up regarding the status of the Zoning Reform Act that we were part of. It didn't make it onto the floor for a vote before the session ended in Boston, along with a lot of other bills that didn't, but what they sent to all of us through the Mass Planning Directors and Mass Chapter of APA is they feel very confident that it should be out either early or mid-term next time in the next session, because of the many senators and reps that are sponsors, one of the lead sponsors is a rep who, according to the email, is about to become the next Speaker of the House. And so the Speaker will be the lead sponsor of this bill, which that should allow it to get to the floor definitely in the next session.
Nice.
So hopefully we'll have some progress and I'll update you as things move forward. Myself and Graves Engineering are having a pre-construction meeting on the North Side Road solar project, and that'll probably be in the very near future, and I'll issue the planning board notice to proceed for the building permit issuance soon. And one other item. You did the site plan review, as you know, for Alex Santos for his industrial warehouse site at the corner of Route 20 and Carroll Hill Road, and he's got various tenants interested. So that's why you see he hasn't built yet the final driveway, because he's determining whether anything would have to change depending on the tenant. And one particular tenant has met with me a few times with his realtor. If this tenant does be the one who enters into agreement, he'd like a larger parking lot, and he also would need a special permit because he would have more of a truck terminal business over there, which is allowed by the bylaw, but under special permit. So I just wanted to give you the heads up that that would come back if that particular tenant is the one that signs the lease.
Okay.
So, but it's nice to see that there's a couple of different parties in hot pursuit of that site.
all right?
Yeah, it's not bad. And that was it for this special meeting. Thank you.
Cheating over here? No, what's that? that concludes the scheduled portion of this meeting, and we'd be done.